Welcome everybody. My name is Don Marr. I'm an author. I've written 3 books, actually 4, and the one I'll be talking about today, ironically, falls right in line with the last one. It's called Second Contact. My life is a series of synchronicity. It just seems to happen that way. And but I'll briefly give you a little bit of information about myself. 1991. I was doing meditating in the middle of the night because I had little children running around the house. The only time I could do it was in the middle of the night. Well, one night I woke up 3:30, only this night was uniquely different. I'm laying in bed and I awake to my left hand writing like crazy. All these ideas are flowing through me. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? And I was told that this was a voluntary process. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. And I said, okay, well, let's go for it. Let's see what we got here. So I got up and went downstairs and wrote things out that came through that night. And the next morning, after I had gone to bed and struggled to get up again, I went down. And it was hard to read because I'm not left-handed. I'm right-handed. But ultimately, every night, exactly at 3:30 in the morning, I would wake. I'd turn and see the digital clock. It said 3:30. And I said, okay, that's time to write. So I went down and wrote. And then finally I got a call and somebody said, do you have anything you want to copyright? I go, well, geez, I have these little stories. And so ultimately I got a title. It's called A Gateway to Higher Consciousness. It's how to connect with your higher soul, yourself, your whatever it is that you want to connect to, that inner voice that comes through you. So then ultimately I wrote another book called My Father Calls Me about a year later. This one was straight dictation. By the way, if you read this book, it elevates your vibration just through the sheer reading of it. I found that because as I was reading it, I would just feel this like, this floatiness that happens with me after I got through with it. And they're saying now that these words, when they're written in this kind of format, direct channel information, your vibration just raises. Second one, I got to interact with it. I said, oh, hold on, time out. I got a few questions I want to ask. So that became My Father Calls Me, One Man's Way Back to God. This, by the way, was written at the same time that Neil Walsh was fretting in the middle of the night writing his books. Both he and only I didn't know about him until later. Then ultimately, on the end of the year, in the 90s, I wrote this last one called The Embodiment of God as a Whole, or Being at One. How do we understand the oneness that we all are when we see ourselves so separately? And in that one I got to interact with it too. But today I'm talking about the one that I had so well led into, and that's called The Second Contact. It's a story about an individual kind of modeled after myself and many of the people that I ran into in my wild life as I ran into all these strange people that made their way into my life. Second Contact is a fictional story. These are nonfiction. This is a fictional story about a gentleman that has a terrible incident that happens in his life that causes him to lose it. He lost everything. Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened. He lost his son. His son died in a horrific incident, and he couldn't handle it. And so he panicked and just was wrought with all this emotion. And ultimately he went off and decided he was going to end it all because he lost everything. He's lost his family, his house, his everything. And he took off. He ends up traveling, just driving, and he ends up in the desert. And his car stops. And he doesn't know what caused that, but it doesn't matter. He's had it. So he gets out and he starts wandering. And he ends up just passing out from sheer exhaustion. Well, he wakes up, comes back, going back to the car thinking, well, I guess I'm not dead. But off in the distance, he sees something that looks very strange. So he goes over there to check it out, and what he finds out is there's a crashed UFO. And there is one person that's still struggling to get out of the crash. And he goes over there, and obviously it's overwhelming, but he does get a chance to save this guy, and they end up saving each other. And they end up going back and forth through this process. It's a little bit like E.T. for an older person. He helps him get through the way of getting back to his machine and getting back to where he needs to go. But along the way, he gets to find out exactly what's going on this gentleman's planet, which is basically our future self. So you will get an idea in this book about your future self, because he comes from a planet that's very advanced. They have a whole system of how to teach children. How the judicial system is completely different. just their general way that they react with each other is different. And it was very much a channeled piece, I think, from the Syrian High Council, because the information mentions Sirius many times, that they were one of the forefathers of us. One of the great lines in there that I laughed at, he said, you know, where are you from? And he said, well, I'm from this area that you call Sirius. He had a different name for it. But the idea was that he said that I'm one of your forefathers, because look at us, we look the same. He did look quite a bit like the hero in this book. And it's called Second Contact because, I'll give it away a little bit, they had previously set up this rendezvous in between lives. And the only way this could happen, that they could get together, was for this crazy circumstance and all these events to happen. But they ultimately came together. And that's like life for us. We'll meet somebody, and that'll be somebody that we were destined to meet because we set it up in a previous time, in another space, in another place. Part of the things that I'll read a little bit excerpt from this is that we have been told that we are to remember. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. This was new information for me. The guy didn't have a name. He had a number. His number was 32 because he's had many names in many lifetimes. And so he asked him, well, what is this remembering thing? How can I remember this? What does that mean? And the remembering is seeing and experiencing a familiar face, a familiar energy in someone you seem to have known from somewhere else, somewhere before. Seeing and feeling the love that unites two souls together again, or feeling the love of many others that reunites many souls in a kinship of long ago. Ultimately, it's remembering the love of Source that unites all of humanity on this and all other planets and even other dimensions. So this is an opportunity for the price of a Starbucks mocha frappuccino. You can get this book, and it'll tell you a little bit about what could be your distant past, because he talks about the process, and he also talks about this four-letter word we're hearing and seeing and feeling a lot about now, and that's the word fear. He talks about what is the basis of this fear and why it's been so ingrained in our planet, and where we can go with this now. Can we move from this thing called fear to love? I think if we look at the basis of all fears, it's the fear of loss of love. And you can check with me back there, and I'll give you the access on how to get to that book. It's all on my business cards, and I'll meet you back there. Okay? Thank you.